Hello and welcome back to Crossroads of Cognizance, the show where you'll hear all things woo woo, all things metaphysical, mental health stuff on occasion, self care, and everything in between. We're taking inventory of the East Coast, the West Coast, and chatting about some commonalities. And if this is your first time joining us, I am one half of this team. I'm Dahlia Rose over here on the East Coast, over here at Crystal Cognizance, where I hold down the fort in my community through healings primarily, but I also offer readings, intuitive guidance. We have a store, so there's shopping available too for crystals and all other kinds of cool tools. And then I have a lovely co-host.
Hi, everybody. I'm Katrina Raspold. I'm in California and in Shingle Springs at Crossroads Metaphysical Store, where I am part owner. And I'm very excited because today is my first day back full time. I have been off on a medical break for, months, absolute months. And I've only worked part time or not at all for the last 6 weeks. And now I'm back, really excited to be here. And now I can have a little bit more of an idea of what to share, but I want to tell you, Dahlia came up with the best idea today, and I'm so excited about today's show. And honestly, I'm starting to think we should just do that every time.
Maybe, I mean, could be a thing.
And
So,
it really applies based on what I've seen too.
every Thursday after Crossroads of Cognizance, Katrina, well, like except for the last several weeks, does a show called Witches of the Crossroads, and they'll pull cards and they'll do different things. And it's kind of been like when I don't know what happened when August 1st hit, but it was like it just was like a on the brakes. And it seemed like everything started moving in slow motion anyway, rather than trying to pick out what we normally do, which is common things that are happening and sort of comparing the two. Hi, Colleen. Right on time, not late. so, rather than what's going on East Coast, West Coast, the question was, what does our audience need to hear? Like, what kind of discussions would be beneficial to you guys? Because you take the time to be with us each week. And so I pulled some cards on that, and we were talking about doing that for the show. So that's where we are today. Two very cool decks that I should have grabbed. Katrina, hold on one second.
I have Quantum. I don't have the
do.
other one that you mentioned.
Oh, let me get it.
I have the Quantum Oracle, which is by Sandra Ann Taylor. And it's an oracle deck. It is not a tarot deck, but it has wonderful cards that are divided up into different sections like consciousness and energy. And it's just a really beautiful deck. But Sandra Ann Taylor does really nice work. I have enjoyed her decks quite a bit.
And so we just got some inventory for oracle cards and tarot cards. So come check that out if you're in the area. But I have two of her decks in stock, Sandra Ann Taylor, and I absolutely love them. I had no idea who this person was until maybe about Monday. So the other deck we are looking at is the Guardian Angel Messages Tarot by Radley Valentine. So in any case, I don't know what inspired this, but here we are. So I think it's worth mentioning, like, when working with cards, it's intuitive guidance, it's clarity. Oftentimes the cards, at least I find, and maybe Katrina has different thoughts, but I find that they're great reflective tools, as well as if you're trying to get a feel for a potential future or get to the heart of a matter. That sort of thing. And so in asking what you guys needed to hear, we're tapping into really big energy. And I think it's worth mentioning, like, if it doesn't resonate with you, that's okay. Like, just let it slide off of you like water off a duck's back.
Well, remember too that our question going into this, and anytime you're confused about a tarot reading or an oracle reading, and whether you're doing it or someone else is doing it, if you don't understand the answer you're getting, look back to the question.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we get busy with narratives coming up in the cards and we forget actually what the original question was. And
Right.
our question going into this that Dahlia posed to the cards was, what do our listeners need to hear? And so it's possible that some of this is for you and some of it is for someone else.
Right.
So don't feel bad if some of this doesn't come through for you, because you just might not be in that boat that needs to hear that part of the message.
Right. And we're having story time like we normally do, guys. So, let's get cracking.
I want to apologize in advance for the reflection on my glasses. It's from my webcam, so I can't change it. And it's blinding, but I need to be able to see the notes. We're not going to go very far.
Right. Blind or reflections? I would take blind or reflections, not blindness. So, with the first card, so we have 10 cards, guys. I mean, they're kind of in pairs, but where do we begin?
I think just jump in reading the pairs.
The Three of Fire. So that is, I could probably show you guys.
It's the Three of Fire?
Yeah, Three of Wands.
Right. What I have to do, and I apologize for this, folks, and I apologize to the lady who made the angel deck. I have to translate what comes up to Rider-Waite, or it doesn't work for me, and I apologize.
No, I fully get that. Sometimes I'm like, no, bring me my old tarot. Like, I need to see, I need to see my other themes. Yeah. So the way that the Three of Fire translates is Three of Wands, and in the tarot deck, for me at least, that's the card of movement. It's the card of like pushing forward, and this card, as decorated by Radley Valentine, it's discussing goals, expressions, and vision. And when we pulling that card in terms of what you all needed to hear, it feels like we're stepping into, a time of the year where goals are becoming more prevalent, even though we're moving into like the softer months. I feel like because we're moving, I know it's Leo season, but we are moving towards Virgo season, and those tend to be like hardworking signs. So,
well, it's a time of harvest, and people think of harvest as being, oh, look at all that I'm getting. I'm getting so much, so many rewards right now. So many things that I set up during the earlier part of the year are now coming into fruition. But what people tend to miss is that harvest is sweaty, hard work. When you're harvesting, man, you are out there in those fields for the longest hours of the day. And so it is hard work, but it's worth it. And that's what the Three of Wands reminds you of, is that what you're experiencing is creating something really dynamic. The threes are synergistic numbers. And so they are creating more than what they should be creating. And in this case, the way I read the Three of Wands is look over your current circumstances to what's coming up ahead. And in that case, it looked like a ship was coming in.
Right.
And so good things are coming.
It's got all kinds of light around it. It's a very exciting card. And I think that, when Katrina talks about looking towards what's coming in, that goals piece really starts to materialize for me. It's one thing to sit back and enjoy the bounty, right? Like Katrina was saying, what's coming for me. It's entirely another to plan for it and to know, how you'll go into using it so that you don't miss the opportunity for that bounty to, say, double itself or to be applied in ways that are meaningful to you instead of the empty expenditure. And what's interesting is that this card, I wish I had pulled these out. That would have been the smart thing to do.
I tell you what, if you want to pull Angel, I'll pull Oracle.
Okay. So the next
that way
card
we can have them ready. Excuse us. We didn't plan this very well at all.
We only planned half the show.
We did, but we planned that half really well.
The oracle card that's paired with our Three of Wands, our Three of Fire here, is the deserving card in the quantum oracle, and that deserving card really taps into that ship coming in. And again, in my opinion, when you're setting goals, you're allowing yourself to expand in ways that you may not have considered, or you can. And then the deserving piece allows you to maybe spoil yourself a little bit. Instead of just thinking of only, man, what bills can I pay off? You're thinking of, man, it's been a long time since I got a massage, or it's been a long time since I went to dinner with friends, especially since, plague. So, there's a lot that comes up for that. And we talked a little bit about, Katrina and I were going to discuss like what we see as we're going to bring the trends in. So when I consider Three of Wands and deserving, what I tend to see in my clientele is givers who have a hard time receiving, and therefore have a hard time with deserving. Like they feel like everybody should get before them. And if you're catching this message, if it feels resonant for you, it may be time to allow yourself to receive. There she is. Look at that. She is like, I mean,
but there we go.
She's what?
It's reflecting. I'm having trouble getting an angle so that it shows
I thought you meant
how well it is. There we go.
I thought she was reflecting, because she seems like she's reflecting on what she deserves.
But when we look at her, it's almost a Nine of Pentacles sort of arrangement. She's in a garden, a beautiful garden. She's very at peace. There's a secure, happy, abundant home behind her. So, yes, what you said, and it really ties into that Three of Wands idea. And you were talking about deserving and how caregivers and people who are in a place to be there for other people often don't feel worthy.
Nope.
And they sure won't ask for help. But something else about deserving I wanted to chime in with real quick is that the word deserve is a weird word because it's a very arbitrary word. If one person says, you deserve that, another person might say, no, they don't. And so it's a very easy word to negate. Whereas what I tell people to do if they're struggling with that is to go with the idea of, I have earned this.
Yeah.
Because that's more qualifying. It's more quantitative, I guess is the word I would use, that you can mark it, you can track it, you have invested. So it feels more substantial.
And I mean, if you think about it, who's to say she didn't labor to pull those flowers? We don't know what was taking place to make that field as abundant and beautiful as it was. And you're right. I mean, I think also what feels weird about the word deserve is we tend to use it negatively.
We do.
We tend to say like, oh, this person deserved what they got, as opposed to, that person really deserves a rest. Because they're always taking care of others.
It can really be weaponized, and we take it as a word of justice or karma, and that deserving. It's just a really, like I said, it's an arbitrary word, and we have to look at how we use it, and use it well.
Do you find that with, we're going to take a little side quest here. I feel like with most arbitrary words that there is a lean towards using them negatively when they're supposed to be neutral.
I agree.
Yeah. English is weird.
English is weird. And the ability to feel deserving is one of our biggest challenges, and we look at, if somebody feels really deserving of good things, we almost look at them like they're broken.
Yeah.
That they somehow believe that they're better than everybody, or that they shouldn't have these thoughts of grandeur, that they deserve amazing things.
And there's like a weird I'm seeing in my mind like how we venerate religious individuals, and you don't ever hear them say like, "Oh no, I don't deserve this," or, and I shouldn't just say religious, right? Like people
Hmm.
of status.
Yeah.
You don't you will rarely hear them say, "Oh, I just couldn't," or,
Hmm.
they just sort of give off the air of deserving, and then we fulfill that if we feel so called. It's a very interesting contrast, but I think if we're really going to step into that expansion that's being pulled in, called in, we're receiving the harvest. You really, really have to get into that place of deserving. Like you have to figure out what that looks like for you. I mean, from the healer's perspective, maybe as a kid, you were the person that always asked mom for toys, and it was like, well, hey, we don't have money for that. And so now it's sort of weird to spoil yourself, or, the minute that you felt good about yourself, somebody shut you down, and feeling good about yourself is associated with receiving items and such. I mean, it can go. There's so many different directions that it can go in, like that sort of false humbleness.
The other side we go to is a criticism often leveled at newer generations now, which is a feeling of entitlement,
Mm,
that you do deserve to be able to stay home, not work, not um, provide for yourself, and that somebody else is going to do that. And so there's just this weird mentality around doing for yourself. And honestly, the only person who can decide whether you are entitled to have what you have or to go after what you want is you.
right,
And
right.
hopefully
You
you surround yourself with people who support your impressions of what you deserve, unless
exactly.
it's negative.
Unless it's negative, unless you're infringing upon another person's right. Um. So the second card is interesting to me because I tend to see it. I tend to see this card as negative most of the time, which is the Four of Earth. If you are familiar with the tarot deck, this is the Four of Pentacles. And normally it's a man sitting on top of his coins, like he's got 2 feet down on coins, and I think one above his head, and then he's like clinching the other one. And with this particular card, this is like in the expression for Radley Valentine's deck, it's frugalness, extravagance, and control. And I mean, her face is kind of like her face is a little snooty. I don't know if that can be seen, but I think when I see that card, there's a lot to be said for not just finances, but also energy. I tend to read the Pentacles suit as energy, and I've said this on another live that I did. Um, just that maybe it's time, in order to benefit from all of these things, to conserve our energy, to withdraw slightly, to be conscious of how we're expending it, who we're expending it with. It's okay to say, I can help you later, or I can't help you at all. I mean, there's so many different directions that one can take. I know I said that last card.
You
So,
know, one of the things about the Four of Pentacles that I always look at is like our concept of deserving. It has positive and negative connotations, and most of the cards do, but some to the extreme. And it can look like you're hoarding, that you're keeping everything into yourself, that you're not sharing, you're not releasing parts of yourself,
right.
or but it can also look like you're keeping your own confidence, that you're keeping yourself safe by not oversharing. And what's interesting is that that kind of relates back to that concept we were just talking about people that overgive. And maybe you need to keep some of that back for yourself
Yep.
and to keep some of your energy to do things you want to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And um, the card that it's paired with. Do you have that one filled out?
I do.
So, what are your thoughts on that? Victim mentality is what that one says.
Hmm.
So that paired with Four of Earth. Katrina, what are your thoughts?
I think that some people really hold the sense of victim mentality very close to them.
Hmm.
And that's what I got from that pair, was that maybe that's that and I just taught this class in BioU Master last night,
Oh, nice.
uh, about how victim mentality is disabling. Not that there are no victims, of course there are victims, but the more that we identify ourselves as a victim and use that to define who we are, the more helpless we become,
Hmm.
because the victim has things done to them. And in our case with clients, we want to empower our clients to be able to take back control of their lives in some way. And often we'll have clients that just keep reverting back to that victimhood. They only are interested in what has been done to them, not what they can do for themselves.
Right.
So that kind of ties into that first pair of saying, you have to be responsible of rewriting the script about what you deserve, and see that your ship is coming in, and leave that victim mentality behind.
Right.
Just stand up out of the shackles of that, because that previous card, that would be the Four of Pentacles. I guess that was the Four of Earth, was it?
Three of Earth. Three of. Wait. Are we talking about the pair, or are
The
we talking?
the one that was paired with victim
Yes. Four
mentality.
of Pentacles.
Four of Pentacles. So when we pair those two together, it seems to indicate that there are people that are really clinging to that victim mentality and holding it close as their self definition, which is a really dangerous place to be.
For me, I saw the pair as you need to kind of close off some of your energy in order to
Yeah,
release the victim mentality. Because if
that
you're
sounds good.
tied into tapped into too many people at one time, it's going to feel like an attack. Especially when you become aware of what's yours and what's not. And so, in order to start the healing process, it is, shut that door, close that lid, so that you can regain some sense of self. I agree.
Mhm.
A lot of folks do hold that victim space very closely, and it's disabling. And I know, like, I've done that.
Me too.
I definitely have gotten into some victim spaces over different things, very personal and challenging things. But I think if we like Katrina did, if we reflect back on the previous card, the Three of Wands, Three of Fire, um, if we close ourselves off slightly, remove ourselves from the victim mentality, we can start to see opportunity. I remember watching a show where they were talking about people's ability to see opportunity versus seeing destruction. Like there are two different brain types in all actuality. Like so sometimes the issue is chemical. That they are just not able to see the opportunity in situations and not able to rise out and rise above. And I think if you carry that brain type, which maybe you're prone to anxiety and things like that, the
Mhm.
best thing that you can do is remove yourself from people because their energy will just continue to overwhelm you. You may start to internalize their stories and you just lose self integrity. And I don't mean like integrity in the sense of like honesty and being a good person, but literal energetic integrity. You start to stretch and fray to the point where you're pulled into, alternate spaces and alternate realities that belong to others. So,
That all really checks out for me. I think that's absolutely a very sound theory. And one of the things that I just ran into yesterday, because yesterday was the first time that I went public with the fact that I just had this surgery and that all that had led up to it. And I had a lot of people that I care about, who I'm close to, come to me very hurt. Why didn't you tell me this was happening?
hmm,
And wondering why I hadn't been more public about what was happening when it was happening. And the reason for that is because I'm blessed to have a lot of people who do love me and do care about what happens to me. And what you were saying about the energy load, when all of those people even start sending good energy to you and prayers to you and love to you when you're healing, it feels like a barrage. It's just all this energy coming at you at once. And I really needed to be very um, specific about the energy I was taking at that time. Not that these people's energy is not precious to me,
Right.
but I had to modulate what I was processing. And for me, because I'm a hermit, anytime I get hit with the energy of a ton of people, it's really overwhelming for me. I don't manage it very well at all. I don't do well in huge crowds. If I
Mm.
go to Disneyland or I go to a concert, I have to shield up big time.
Right.
And so, yeah, I really get what you're saying about that huge influx of energy and separating out who you are from that. And too few people do that.
And I think there's something to be said for your healing process, right? And the healing process of everybody. If we were all busy putting energetic hands on you to save you, do you really get the sense of presence that resolves what you went through, where it began? You know, you don't really get a sense of all that's going on, and it was almost better to let you be in that, not almost, it was definitely better to let you be
Hmm.
in that space so that your body could be like, "Hey, okay, we can recover from this." And, you know, God forbid there be anything else, we now know what our strength is like.
Sure.
And we know that we have these people to lean on. It's like it's the necessity of needing both.
It's true. And I didn't just want to heal what was happening with my body.
Right.
I wanted to go deeper into why did this happen? What are the messages behind this? And if this sounds really tacky, but if it heals too quickly, or if it heals outside of me by other energy, I don't have a chance to process all of that.
Right. I mean, it's kind of like we're kind of basically saying like you suffered as needed,
Yeah.
but life is not. We're not here to avoid life happening. And I think that, at least I know in the healing community, there seems to be a strong pull for like avoiding pain, and that's not the way through. It's the way around, and it'll just cycle
Mhm.
back around.
Yep.
um, but maybe in the interest of time, go on to the next card because I could talk about like avoidance all day. Um,
Well, and it's our show. We can talk about whatever we want. We can run as long as we want to.
we
Yeah, we
definitely could.
could.
Um, the next card. So the Four of Cups. If you're familiar with, or Four of Water, as it is in the case of Bradley Valentine's deck, if you're familiar with the Four of Cups, it is misery. This is, look at all this opportunity behind you. No, I don't care. Life is terrible.
Hmm.
And whenever I see this card, I'm like, the question is always what, again, maybe running with the theme, what opportunity is not being seen?
Hmm.
And so the expression of this card, as per Radley Valentine, is distraction, self absorption, and discontent.
Mm.
Um, I think that we spoke to all the potential distractions as far as energetics are concerned, but I would say that getting too deep into this pain will never leave or this circumstance will never change is a great distraction as well, because you're missing the point. You're looking at the external instead of the internal at that point. Um, and so it's hard to see, like, if you're too self absorbed, I guess we're getting like the other side of the coin. It's like self reflection is where we started. And now we're getting this, like, but don't go too far. The
Mm.
world does not revolve around you piece, which entitlement was a word that Katrina used
I
earlier.
think I think too, I love how this reading is all tying together because it's about how people can get lost in victimization and how
Mm.
people can get lost in their own narrative of how things are. This is another thing we talked about in class last night is people tend to paint little boxes of what their world looks like. And even when showed concrete proof that there are options outside of what they're seeing, they will just look away and say, nope, I can't do that because of this, this, and this, and always have a reason why. But with this card comes a level of discernment and wondering what opportunities you should accept and which ones you shouldn't. But again, like you said, not getting lost in that space of self-absorption. And a lot of people in victim mentality, especially those who are in victim mentality because of overgiving,
Mm.
they don't want to know that they are not essential. They don't want to know that they could take a day for themselves and do what they want to do. They're so
Right.
locked into identifying themselves positively and their worth positively by what they're able to do for others. And I think that this is about don't get lost in all of that self-thought. Don't listen to your own press too much.
Right.
Look outside and accept the gifts that are being offered instead of saying, like you said, no, I couldn't possibly. I mean, how many people are clearly in need of help and just will not accept it when it's offered?
Right. Like that. I think we brought this story, or like, I'll say it's a parable of God will help me, and in the middle of a flood, you're sitting on your house, on the roof, saying that God will save me from all of this, and then a helicopter comes by, a boat comes by, all these people come by to try to take you off and into safety, and you're like, no, no, God will help me, and I think that, especially with the image, I mean, this isn't a far cry from the tarot card image.
No, it's
You're
very
looking at opportunities, and you may even be frozen in indecision, like they're all great because none of those cups are tipped over, and you may be thinking, well, what if I choose this path instead, and like what happens to the other two? And we are not trapped in these sort of decisive spaces because one, time doesn't exist. Two, every decision that you make is still made in a different reality. Like the opposite of your decision is still made in a different reality, which makes deja vu a thing. It makes, when you uh, seemingly change your mind or change the direction of things that you're going in and you start going down a new path, there is like, it almost feels like you've been there already, been in the work, been in the weeds of it all already. This is because that reality was playing out,
mm-hmm.
at least as theorized by like the Akashic records and stuff like that. So, along with Four of Cups or Four of Water, what did we have, Katrina?
Optimism. And
Ah.
the other side of that story about the flood is that the person actually drowns, they die, and they get very angry with God for not saving them. And God says, what do you want? I sent you a boat. I, I sent you a helicopter. So this is optimism, and this is about replacing a sense of self-absorption and self-narrative with opening up to all that the world has to offer and actually believing that you are deserving of good things and that good things are going to come to you.
Instead of that victim mentality.
Mm-hmm.
So optimism can be a way through, and when I look at that and reflect on that, it doesn't we're not talking about toxic optimism, the oh everything's fine. We're talking about, maybe you can only take nibbles off of the small things that happen. So, man, I drove to work and didn't get in an accident. That's being optimistic, even though it sounds terrible. That everything is going so wrong in your life that you have to worry about that little piece. Yeah, maybe. The thing is, without pushing for the toxic optimism, realizing that the small moments can add up. Your body is listening, your your mind is listening, and what we don't realize is how the small moments tend to add up in negative ways we can do the same for the positive. And so if you can just reflect on the fact that, you didn't step in dog shit on your way to something important, that's great. You didn't spill your coffee on yourself. That's great. And these may be things that sort of, tape your world together until you can really get in there and refasten, you know, and restructure what you need to be whole again, instead of sitting in misery and indecision with the Four of Cups.
I totally agree with that. And that's why gratitude journals are so fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And you can, at the end of the day, or even at the beginning of the day, or both, make a list of everything that you're grateful for. And it can be things as fundamental as, I'm glad I have a home to live in.
Yeah.
You might be 5 months overdue on your rent and
Mm.
looking at a pay or quit notice, but right now, today, you have a home to live in. As you go to sleep that night, you're under a roof. You're grateful you had something to eat that day. And I've never been a fan of comparatives where we say, oh, look at this person who is so much worse off. And think about how much worse your life could be. I'm a big fan of think of how much better your life could be, and maybe how much better it is than what it was at a different time of your life.
Mm.
And just get really invested in what is going right. And like you said, it might be the simplest things. None of my children got hurt in school today,
Mm.
or that I know of.
Right.
Or
And nowadays, that's a huge thing.
yeah, I didn't get any bills in the mail today.
Mm.
Just things that make you feel safe, things that make you feel happy, and really reiterate those things. And like you said, your body, your mind, your spirit are listening to you reaffirm those positions of gratitude.
Absolutely. So optimism.
Optimism.
Um, the next card we have is the Five of Air, or in the regular tarot, this would be the Five of Swords. And so, as per, she looks none too happy. She looks like she's waiting
Mhm.
on God to save her. As per the expression for Radley Valentine, it's mistakes, melodrama, and reassessment. So the Five of Swords. In my mind now, I'm trying to piece together what it looks like, because
That's
it
the
just
one
left my.
where they're on the battlefield
Oh
and
yes,
someone
and
is
you lose.
collecting the spoils of war. So I interpret that one as you benefiting from somebody else's loss.
Yes.
And so it's almost, it can either be kind of a ha ha, or it can be kind of a bittersweet thing that you're getting the job because your friend got fired, or you're picking up the swords. And that's what's always fascinating about battle, is that you have these two factions coming together with the intention of killing each other.
Right.
And so you have all these dead bodies, but you have all of these resources there as well. You have their money, you have their weapons. And so that's the spoils of war, is picking up what was left behind. And it's a really grim card. And what's interesting is that the card is paired with courage.
Have the courage to stab that other person and pick up their spoils.
And yeah, and I think it means have the courage to accept what is being offered to you. Like
Mm.
it's being discussed. You worked for this. Battle isn't easy.
Right.
You know, you fought for this. And here it is, so have the courage to go get it.
And have the courage to choose yourself
Yeah.
over maybe the other person. Um, I've seen this card also interpreted as you losing the battle, but, there's more to be won later. So foster whatever you can in terms of recovery.
Or switch
Um,
sides. Pretend you were on the winning side.
deny, deny, deny.
Yeah.
Um, so in terms of like what the collective could gain from all of this, we talked about, having the courage to go after it.
Oh, look,
And
the courage card has got a warrior on it, a knight.
yeah, he's a total soldier on there.
Yeah, he is.
So those cards are definitely jiving together. Sometimes you won't know what you're walking into until you're in the middle of it, but have the courage to move forward, even if it's you know a battle that you're not familiar with. I think I've also seen this being about fighting other people's battles as well.
Mm,
Um, so in everything that we've talked about, there's this space of um, uh, self self awareness, maybe even some self preservation. Not from a place of like selfishness or pulling back, but maybe this like, I'm just as important as the people that I normally put up on pedestals, and now it's time to embody a life that reflects that. And so, you know, yes, you may have made some mistakes in choices, but it doesn't have to be melodramatic. And you can always just go back and reassess what works for you. Oftentimes, I find myself telling my clients and people in general conversation, you made the decision that you knew to make, and you made the best decision you could in the moment. I've also found myself saying more often, you've done the best that you can, and not feeling like I'm just fluffing somebody's ego. Like, seriously, maybe that was all you had, and I can accept that in that moment. It's brought me more empathy for people because maybe they don't have the bandwidth to perform in maybe a way that I need or what have you. But then I can still have the courage to choose myself and say, you did the best you could, but it wasn't enough for my self
right.
preservation if I was in on the receiving end. So.
Another thing that ties those two cards together is it takes a great deal of courage to admit that you've made a mistake.
Yes, it
And so this
does.
could also be about owning your issues and your mistakes and where you misstepped and being a big enough person to say, I feel bad about this. I shouldn't have done this. Or I see now that that was really hurtful to you, and I never ever meant for that to be how it was. And to just, even on the slightest things, to show that you're self-aware enough to understand your behavior was inappropriate, to be able to own that is really big for people. People appreciate that.
Right, to see another person's pain despite your intentions, despite, anything that you were trying to do can completely change the situation. And I think it gives space, like when we take the time to recognize how our actions impacted another person, then it gives them the space of of self-reflection rather than defending themselves towards you. Like, you're like, oh well, I didn't intend to, and then it ends up in a conversation where it's like, well, I know you didn't intend to, but this which did, da 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 da, back.
Hmm.
And if you take that and say, I know what I did, you can really give that person, they can expend less energy in explanation, which everybody wants to be understood, so it's coming. Expend less of that, move more into a space of healing, and this can be for us too. What if somebody doesn't recognize your pain? Do you have the courage to hold space for yourself? Because
Hmm.
that again is also challenging for us to do, because we might go, well, it wasn't that bad. I mean, I really I understood. I could handle it. And it's like, well, maybe you have the courage to say no, it was fucked up and you didn't like it. So,
And it takes a lot of courage to go to somebody and say, you know, I care enough about our relationship to say, this is something that keeps happening and this really hurts me.
hmm,
And I don't feel good about it. How can we make this not a thing? And too often we do have people thinking that we should just get stronger or we should just understand their intention, when the message itself is, this hurts me, don't do this, or I am going to have to remove you from my circle of trust here.
right, right. and the courage is risking their response.
It is. Anytime you approach somebody either in an offensive or a defensive way, when there's some kind of conflict, there's huge risk. And I think one of the grandest things we can do is not to need to understand or intellectualize why our behavior hurts somebody,
Mm,
but to just say, this hurts you, so I'm not going to do this anymore. I don't need to understand why. I don't need to know your triggers. I don't need to evaluate it and have it make sense for me. I need to know that I value you enough to not do this when it hurts you.
right. It's such a point of maturity because we live in such an explanatory society. Like, make it make sense.
Yeah.
And there is room for it just to say, like, and I have had to do this several times this year. Like, I started with the explanations and I was like, but wait a minute, I don't understand. If this is what you said happened, and then I have to go, wait, stop. It hurt, and that's all that matters. And I should have just seen your pain first. So it's it's a 360-degree or 180-degree um, spin in a conversation. It completely changes the way things feel and materialize. And so there's courage to be had on all parts, I think. Um, but moving to the last card, which is our Page of Air. Now, whenever the page comes up, I tend to see these guys materialize as immature energy, youthful. Now, the Page of Air has, I guess, the immaturity would be the outspoken piece, as um, uh, Radley Valentine has designed the card. Truthful, analytical, outspoken, and not everybody outspoken is immature. Let me just say that. I mean, sometimes you got to be. But when I consider this card as far as what we could be looking at, this guy is ready for battle. He's ready to charge forward. He's ready to do whatever he needs to. He's also dressed in layers. So maybe there's something going on under that jacket where he's prepared for all situations. Um, and I think it's worth looking at. In my tarot deck, this guy has kind of 1 foot forward, and he's like, ba 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 ba, and he's ready to step forward. And this guy has. It seems like he's pausing. It seems like he's in wait to see what is necessary, and to cut down to the truth of the matter.
I tend to interpret the pages as messages, as
Mm,
in you're being paged. And so when a page comes up in one of my readings, I look at, okay, what information is coming through here? Is it something that's being channeled and that's intuitive, or is it actually a physical message that's going to change things? And with the Page of Swords especially, it tends to be messages that really cut through the bullshit, messages that
mm,
are very direct, and messages that change things. So with the Page of Swords, if I got that in a reading, I would tell the client, really pay attention to the messages that you get coming up, and think about how they are formative. How are they changing what's going on with you, or be prepared for a message that shifts things.
right. Be prepared.
Yeah,
Expect the unexpected. I think is
right.
an actually I've seen that with the Page of Swords and the Knight of Swords.
And
Um,
in that case, you've got a little kid basically holding a sword, which you really don't expect. I mean, there are some countries that do weaponize children,
yeah.
but overall, we don't expect that. So expect the unexpected. This little kid has a freaking sword and is comfortable using it.
Now, what's interesting is the card that it's paired with.
Yes, deception. So reading those two together, I would say, given everything that just happened in all of these pairs, the idea that we're looking at the concept of self-involvement and
Mhm.
victim mentality and maybe overdoing, and then having the optimism shoring up, this might be saying that the reason you need to get good with Jesus in this regard is because there's some news coming of somebody who's deceiving you.
Yeah.
And you need to be prepared for how you're going to manage that. And the previous set would remind you to manage it in a way that's very direct and doesn't pull any punches about how you're feeling about it. That would be my take on it.
And in the spirit of talking about kids and things like that, it feels very much like family things stepping
Mm-hmm.
forward, and like I almost get this vision of like the you go like going to a family gathering and everybody has watched you grow up, so you're forever a child and you find yourself sort of defending your truth and like cutting through their bullshit, as being, and we're stepping into that season of like family gatherings and annoying circumstances, some loving but some annoying circumstances where Uncle Joe might misgender you, or um Aunt Debbie disapproves of your crystal collection that she saw on her way in. Like, you may have to cut through some truth, some bullshit, and not to
Mm-hmm.
be so specific, but this, it doesn't have to be family gatherings, it could be friends. Especially with the deception piece, people could be. I noted the ladies, the two people talking behind the lady's back. Um,
Getting it. There we go.
this could be rumors and things going on, as to why you've made certain decisions or things like that. And so, for whoever these messages resonate with, like Katrina said, the power of self awareness. And I mean, maybe there's a goal in here to not fold. That's where we started. Don't fold under the pressure, or maybe finally speak your truth.
And as we're, I don't want to say beaten down, but pushed into that victim mentality by all that we're giving and all that we're doing, or all that is done to us, it becomes harder and harder to accept betrayals and accept things that happen. Even though we come to expect it, each one hurts.
Yeah.
And so this is encouraging us to be strong enough to let that be a part of life and not have it change how we think about ourselves. Just see it as an adjustment. One of the best things you can do when somebody betrays you, even though it hurts, is to really objectify that as important information to have. And
Right.
that's what the Page of Swords is telling us. I'm going to give you a message that's going to hurt, but you need to know.
Right.
And we can just say, this is just information that I need to formulate my opinion, my thoughts, how I'm going to manage this.
And you don't have to lather it over the whole of society. It's not all women. It's not all men. It's not all, you
Mm-mm.
know, certain types of people. It is this person. Not all dogs bite.
Right.
Um, so, and I think there's also some elements here to come to truth within ourselves. Maybe the truth is that certain situations are not ideal and need to change. Maybe it is that, um, you know, things are not okay, or maybe it is that things are better than you thought. It can really go off in some different turns and different directions. That was quite the roller coaster, I
It
think.
sure
Would
was.
be eager to hear what you guys thought if you enjoyed this format, because we can always do it again. But it sounds like the collective, what our audience needs to hear
Mm-hmm.
is, stand strong in who you are, stay aware. Don't get into that, or do your best to get out of that victim space, conserve your energy, um, reevaluate, reassess, and stay in truth as much as possible. What do you think, Katrina?
I agree completely. It's a wonderful synopsis. And one of the things that we would love for you to do is if you can reply in the comments, tell us some of the things that you would like for us to discuss. What are
Yeah,
some things coming up that you think would be a good topic for us to cover? And we're happy to look into that for you.
absolutely. We can bring our cards along. So, as always, we have reached that time. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this. And we do see our comments after where we get little notifications. So, if, like Katrina said, if you have thoughts, share them. And we will catch you next time on Crossroads of Cognizance. Bye, everyone.
Bye.